Wait for it to spin. All right, we should be live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this live with Nick, the brainstorming bestie. Nick is an intuitive business brainstormer and badass alignment mentor. And I want to pause real quick and say if you are watching live, please type live in the comments so we know you're here. And if you're watching the replay, also add replay there so that we can know how many people were able to join and watch the video. And it definitely helps with the algorithm to get this video shared with everybody. So thank you for tuning in. Um, I want to share with everybody that Nick is my business bestie. She is, I have to give so much credit to Nick for why the Asian Detox podcast is able to launch today. We met, I want to say it was November, and Nick was hosting her brainstorming sessions as market research. So I jumped on that shit. And we have been like this close since in like all of our business stuff, always talking. And I definitely wanted to do this live because although my podcast is about what it's like to be Asian American and a business owner, and season 2 will include immigrants, it will take a little bit before I can get Nick on the podcast as part of one of those interviews. So I wanted to go ahead and do a session with her today to talk about what it's been like behind the scenes in making this podcast something that we could show to the world. So thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. First, let me just start by saying congratulations to you on the official launch day of your podcast, the Asian Detox Podcast. Just to see the journey of where you started from, which we're going to get into, to where you are now, it was just beautiful, and seeing you coming into your own and embracing the culture and realizing that your voice matters, the stories matter, So kudos and congratulations to you today on your launch day.
Well, thank you. You've been such a big support getting me here.
Thank you.
So, no, I'd love for you to share with the audience what, like from your perspective, what was it like watching me go through this journey to creating the podcast?
Okay. Oh man. So like TJ said, we met during my market research in November of 2021, and you were one of the first people to jump on my post about like, hey, I'm a brainstormer, I like ideas and all these things. And I remember in our session, you're talking and like, okay, what are these steps? And I don't know, it just kept saying like, why are you not in your community? And, I'm just getting these pictures of like, you should be speaking to the Asian community. And I remember when I told you like, or suggested like, do this podcast and stuff. And you kind of got emotional. I remember you was like, I can't cry because I can't talk.
It's true. If I start crying, especially that version where like my entire face crumbles, then like words will not come out of my mouth. So.
You said that. And I remember thinking like, if this is what she wants to do, like why you're not doing it, right? And I didn't understand at that time that it's easy for me outside of the box to say, oh, well, just do this, compared to you having to go through the journey to get comfortable being there. And when we became accountability partners, because that's how it started off, and the closer that we got, and, we right off the back, we just clicked, that I was able to see that journey, because like our conversations got deeper, and then we started talking about cultural things and where there were similarities and differences, and and then I got an in-depth look of like, okay, this is why your voice, you weren't comfortable at that time when we had the market research of doing that. But it was beautiful to see like the reminders that I was able to give you to get you back on track and make the connection for you, that you're like, okay. And then you just started seeing you getting like more comfortable with the conversations and more comfortable of saying certain things. And I think that was really beautiful, seeing you come into your own and seeing you saying like, I want to reconnect with the culture, and having your voice, and you're saying it in that, and realizing like, you're not the only one. And you just showing up in this way is powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely remember, and I think this touches on like you talk about the concept of fearing less. And I think at the time that we met initially, like you'd been living that. Like you've
Mm.
been through like understanding that you only have the one life to live and how to be your fully authentic self all the time. And I wasn't there yet. Like it was an aspirational thing for me to be able to be visibly Asian, or like, though I do completely remember, and I want to pull out this comment of like talking to you, and you said I lit up when I pointed out that like this is my kitchen, and clearly I did not clean it up for this live, and I hadn't cleaned it up for the brainstorming session with you either. And I had said like I want people to see this, that I'm visibly human, that there's like I don't try to hide like what it is that gets me where I am, because there's a lot that people might say that like, especially on social media, right? They see things that like I've achieved, or that the titles I've had in my past, and I want them to know that I'm like, I'm not perfect. And I don't get where I am today by also doing all these other things that we expect of like the perfect version of a person. So I'm like, look, this is the ball I choose to drop because I'm focusing on other things. And I would say, like, even if we hadn't become accountability partners, you planted a seed in me that
Mm.
said, hey, this is a thing that I should be looking at, that I had never considered being like a representative of the Asian American community. I felt so detached from the community at that point. I felt like I didn't have a right to like comment on what it's like to be Asian American, or like to have that cultural commentary at all. And like, even if we hadn't decided to continue like working together in the accountability capacity, like I think like eventually I would have gotten to this point, but definitely not near as fast as the fact that like between the two of us, we've had so many deep conversations
Yeah.
of like, from my perspective, when I talked about getting the scholarship to my college, and then you were like, whoa, in the Black community, that's a big deal. That shouldn't have been something that like got passed over. And being able to do that like true compare and contrast versus what like trying to compare my experience to stereotypical like Asian American, like what the media tells you the stereotype should be,
Mm.
and also the stereotype for like a more whitewashed culture. And it probably would have taken like even longer, like I would say another 2 years, if we hadn't continued to have those conversations.
It's so funny that you say that because I remember the resistance at first, because it was resistance, right? And I think, like you said, it had to get you out of that fear. And I think it was a lot of judgment and comfortability because, like, most of your clients were white. And I remember that you would be like, why is all these white people coming into my program? He was like, I like them, but like, why? And I'm like, are you talking to your community? And that was like a big aha moment for you. Like,
Yes.
you're not talking to them. So why do you expect them just to come to you because you're Asian? Like, talk their language and share your stories and share that part of your life where you felt a disconnect, because being a first generation Asian American, like, that is a story in of itself, and you cannot be the only one that feels that way, and the power of using your voice and sharing your story to make those connections. And I think this journey pointed out for me that, like, I like that place of mentorship. Not that I was your mentor, but the guidance, the constant being like, TJ, what you doing? Get back over here.
Real accountability part of this relationship. And I think it's fair to say that there is a version of mentoring where it's co-mentoring, right?
Yes, yes.
Where like you hold me accountable to really to pursue this purpose that I've had, that like I've been hiding from myself, and vice versa. Like anytime that you needed to talk something out, or we talk about just making sure that you remember like why you're doing something. Like I think that that's, we don't talk about that much in the mentoring space of like, this isn't always like a one directional
Right.
relationship.
No,
Most
not at all.
relationships should be bidirectional.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would flood TJ with ideas. So this is not one-sided where I'm just like, oh, I'm helping you. I mean, you have been tremendous just in my growth as well, but just based off of this launch and just seeing the progression of where you started to where you're at, and just realizing, like, I think what also helped you on the journey to get where you are now is that I was always able to make connections where you couldn't see it. Because you would say something, I'm like, oh, well, this is how you connect that into your business, and this is how you connect this to talk. So I was always like making those connections where I think it became easier for you to visualize you doing this and visualize what it can look like, and things like that. And I think, that played a big part. So you would think something is so nonchalant, or you would tell me something, and I'm like, well, this is how you can do this to talk to the community, or this is how you could do this to show up in this way. And I started noticing the change when you started making a connection and putting it together, like, okay, Nick just said this, and then you can visualize, like, oh, well, that would work, and this would work. And that started becoming less of me having to say that, because then you started to embrace the vision on your own without much like nudge from me, because a part of me was like, what the hell is she not doing this? I mean, see, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, your pronouns.
You're
like,
good.
Why are you not doing this? Because for me, I seen it clear as day. From the first day, I'm like, oh, this is what you should be doing. Not realizing that's my gift as brainstorming and building and seeing your whole business in my head. But then what you did was kind of slow me down to be like, this ain't about me. This ain't about like me getting to the goal of brainstorming and having to hit it, but like the journey, that because I unlocked this for you and I planted the seed of watching it flourish. And that was an honor to see that, and honestly beautiful. And that kind of made me step back and realize, like, not only the power of brainstorming, like what it can do for someone's life. And that got me exploring deeper into like, what am I here for, and what is my purpose, and how aligned am I with what I'm here to do on my time here on earth. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I think we've both had this realization of this concept of, and for context, people, when I met with Nick, like I was still trying to do more of the corporate consulting type of work, where I would come in and with my IT project management background, do more of like a systems analysis type of thing, where I would say, hey, you're trying to accomplish this, what technology would fit here, what makes sense, like how to do the process map of like your current state versus your future state, and all of these things that were extremely technical. And Nick could tell right away that this was my zone of excellence, not my zone of genius. That she could point out to me that like my body language was saying something else versus what was coming out of my mouth, or what I thought I wanted to do with my business. So imagine me sitting there thinking that I was going to just do more project management type work for smaller businesses, to going, oh, there should be a podcast about being Asian American, and like trying to reconcile those two concepts, because I knew I could make money with the project management stuff, right? But when you talk about a podcast, yes, there's lots of podcasts out there, and most of them are self-funded. Unless they're backed by a large network, then they're usually out of pocket for somebody. My favorite podcast actually was somebody who worked like 4 years, their full-time job, and doing the podcast on a weekly basis, and putting their own money into it before they ever got like any kind of ad revenue or any other way of getting something back out of it. So sitting there being like newly independent and going, well, like where does this podcast thing fit in, was very hard to see, especially like Nick said, I didn't see how it connected to the business. And in that like connection evolved as I started talking about the money coaching stuff, about how to be more abundant, about cash flow management. Those things kind of converged for me when I actually had a friend visit from California. He happened to be in town for work, and he's like, hey, let's go get some boba. So I was like, okay, let's go. Like it was like a Thursday night, and it's like past my bedtime. But I was like, let's do it because he's in town. And we started talking about like how he had like a rental property, like the first property he bought in Seattle, he ended up renting out, and then he was renting at a lower cost at somebody else's from an Asian woman who was like so proud of him for doing that, because she understood like the financial arbitrage he was doing with the rents. And like we were talking about how, like, because I also have rental property, and this phrase came out of his mouth of like, Asians love to talk about money. And I was sitting here and I was like, oh yeah, they do. Like, that's how isolated I was from the Asian American community, that I forgot that, like, growing up, it was so normal to talk about, like, the sales and the deals that we got at, like, a yard sale, or, like, my mom was always in the stock market and things like that. And I know that, like, some of my high school acquaintances, that they basically talk about stocks and crypto all the time, and like they're my best friends, not mine. But like, I don't know why it didn't sink in until, like, I was in the money coaching space, and then also trying to figure out what this podcast looked like. I was trying to be like, what niche is it in? Who am I really talking to as my target audience, and all of these things. And like, that's how far apart I was from it until where I am today, and having Nick hold me accountable alongside and make sure that I never forgot that this was something that I wanted to do was huge. It was definitely something I could have easily buried, but because Nick was always talking to me about these, and we were actually having, like, true conversations that I could envision as being podcast episodes, it made it so much easier to pull the trigger on getting a podcast launch producer to help me with this and get this out the door to where it is today.
It's so crazy to say that, because I remember at a few times I was like, TJ is probably like, if Nick don't stop with all these connections. I mean, y'all, it was bad. I mean, everything. If she couldn't say a word without me saying, well, that could be a conversation. That's the episode.
There was a lot of, like, okay, cool, let me process that, right? There was a lot of processing and, like, internal healing that was going on with me. And there was also a lot of conversation around, like, not only was it like how to see the connections of how it worked into my business model, or the, like, how real it could be, but also, like, this fits into, like, where I am as far as my philosophy with the money coaching aspect of, I wasn't financially in a place to invest in the podcast yet, because I don't believe in, like, overspending myself before I've earned the money. Like, I knew that if I put myself on a payment plan with the podcast producer, that I would have made the money in time to pay my bills. But I didn't want to put myself in that place, because that would have forced me to feel like I was working to pay off a debt versus working to do the work. So some of Nick's frustration with me was like, Nick, I just don't have the cash right now. Like, if it's not in my bank account, I'm not making that investment. And so sometimes it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't emotionally ready, but I think there was a dual aspect to it of, like, using my ability to invest cash on hand in the development of my brand and the podcast itself, allowed me the breathing room to also take my time to, like, allow my subconscious to decide what this was going to be. Because I think one of our early versions of the title was, like, I think it was Asians in the West. And Nick, I know you love that title, but I was sitting there going, I'm not, like, I know it says what I need it to say, but I, like, wasn't in love with it. So there was a lot of just.
I came up with that. That wasn't mine.
No, I think you latched onto it.
Asian in the West? I don't even remember that.
Something like that. What was it?
It definitely wasn't Asian in the West, but we did throw out a few names, which I'm glad you went with the Asian Detox Podcast, by the way.
At this point, I don't remember what all the options were, but like, that was really some of the holdup really was feeling like I was able to articulate what the podcast was supposed to be about, who it was talking to, and, like, having a title that I felt like that, like, represented the feeling that I was going through. And I think that was huge, because at the time that Nick and I met, I legitimately thought that the Asian American community was extremely toxic, that it was all about the hustle, that, like, if you post anything, and this is the other thing, I wasn't posting anything about my Asian American identity on social media. I wasn't recording anything, or, like, when I was a guest on other people's podcasts, it wasn't, like, a point of, like, a topic that I would bring up. And like that, those were all like little ways that Nick was poking me to be like, hey, if you want to do this podcast, don't do it Big Bang style where suddenly you're recording it for like viewing for other people. Just start recording yourself talking about it either in private or go live or post about it. And those were all like very necessary steps for me to get to where I am today.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I remember there was a time where you were concerned about like people that you're friends with seeing this and what would they think, and even just those little posts of like I can't remember what the name is, like even with the mom or the one with the cake. Let's talk about the post with your cake and your birthday. You know, like that was, I think, one of the first post that you made where you kind of like, well, this is me. And then it just started becoming where you'll be like, or I send you stuff because that's how I am. So I would send you like, oh, look at this. Or, you know, so then you'll go with like how you felt attached with what feelings it brought up to you. And I think that also made you become comfortable of having these conversations or going live or saying like, I'm very Asian and, you know, I want to reconnect. And you know, those little tidbits of just talking, saying your story, you know, connecting the two, just being transparent helped on your journey to get here.
Yeah, there's two parts that I want to highlight, right? Of you sending me stuff that like content where like another Asian American commented on their culture or about like the Asian hate things. Like that was the world I was living in, where I was actually following a lot of Black business owners on my social media, and the like radio silence that I was experiencing during the pandemic about the Asian hate stuff, that I like only heard about it because my mom texted me to make sure I was safe, or that like I was seeing all of the other ethnicities talk about what was going on with them and then not seeing it from the Asian American community or other minorities. And we had some tough conversations about why that was. And the fact that you were able to surface up some of that content, and then I went and intentionally tried to add as many like Asian influencers to my Instagram feed as possible, like really helped me have something to react to, first of all, and also feel seen in the sense that like I wasn't the only one observing a certain thing, or that like somebody had a tangential like similar experience. So the first one you sent me was a TikTok with this young woman who like commented on how her younger sister was also in America, like they were immigrants, and she was funding her younger sister's lifestyle, not only from a college tuition perspective, but also from like shopping sprees and stuff. And she was crying as she was saying this of like, I am not just a wallet, I am a human being, and all of these things, that where she was getting so much flack from her family back in, I want to say it was the Philippines, for trying to set some boundaries, which is something we teach in America of like boundaries are important, that you get to be your own individual. And seeing that like play out in her life, where she had come from Asia and then come to the West and adopted some of like, she spoke English fluently, she had no accent, those types of things. And like her, how upset she was by it. I was like, this is like, that could have been me. And I wrote a whole post about it, and like clearly I was crying while I was writing it, of like, if like so many circumstances that like how embedded money was in our culture of like survival, or what you owe your family because you've gotten to a certain point, those were huge. And I couldn't have like, I would not have found that on my own. I wasn't on TikTok for sure, so I would not have found that one. So the fact that Nick is like constantly sending me these things, and then I get to take my time to choose what I react to and how I react to it publicly, has been huge in helping me practice being more vulnerable publicly. And I remember that conversation about like this perceived expectations or like perceived future judgment if I was to post things on social media was something that I was battling, because I'm all about being transparent when I'm in a one-on-one setting or in a small group setting. I will talk about anything, like my mental health, like my like food restrictions, those types of things. But on social media, it just feels different, right? Because it's like some kind of permanent, someone can take a screenshot, you can get all of these like these griefers and like the jerks that want to like just type things that are like, they don't know you, so they're going to just say rude things. And you poked me to like examine that feeling of that apprehension. And and I remember telling you that I had to talk to my mom about like the fact that I wanted to do this podcast and stuff. And I ended up just like I kept dragging it on. I still hadn't talked to them. And like I don't talk to my parents much in the first place, but you kept like asking me if I'd done it yet and I hadn't. So finally I was just like, let me just unfriend my mom from Facebook so that she doesn't see any of this.
It is what it is.
Like what? She's not on Facebook much anyway. She posts like pictures of her garden up there and then asks me if I've seen it. And I'm like, okay, great. So I did it without telling her, and it was months until she noticed. And then I had to like tell her, hey, I can't see that picture because I actually unfriended you. And she was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like I totally not the reaction I expected to have.
That's how it normally is. People, it's what a projection of what we think, because how we probably would react to something, or because we're afraid, but it's the truth. Most people got their own life. They ain't worried about us.
Yeah.
They not.
That's why it's like so important to talk these things out, right? Because for me, having it all stuck in my head, I was just going to go in circles. But because we got to talk about it, that like, first of all, I could hear myself saying it. And then if I missed anything or if like something was important that I wasn't realizing, then you were able to reflect that back to me. And that really helped me process what I needed to get to like, I wouldn't say I'm completely healed, right, in terms of my relationship with my Asian American identity, but I would argue that I'm at least 60% closer to like being absolutely comfortable in my skin from that standpoint of like that identity, at least.
That's beautiful. And I mean, I could definitely see the difference from when we started to now. And just the ease of like you talking about it and you just coming to terms of like, this is, and you made a post talking about your podcast and was like, I don't know how much money I'm going to make from this, but the purpose, the reason I'm doing this is more, it's bigger than that. And, I talk about alignment. That's the work that I do. We talk about it a lot on a one-on-one basis, and just seeing that alignment happen for you, and seeing you embrace it, and I'm realizing like there's an ease and a comfort that has come over you that I've noticed, with just saying like, this is my voice, this is the impact I'm here to make in the community, this is the connections I want to have, and like whatever happens, I'm okay with it because I'm doing it from the heart, I'm doing it from the soul, I'm doing it because this is what I'm called to do. And that is like inspiring. It's beautiful to see that. It really, really is.
Well, and I like this is what you do with your clients is help them find that alignment and that purpose and like really call it in for them. So like I'm not the only one you've seen this in. I just happen to be the one that you get to like watch the journey in. So what is that like when people work with you? Like I know for a fact that I've seen in some of your events that they light up after a certain point. So tell me what that looks like for you of like what that does, like just okay, I'm going to keep talking if I don't stop. So I'm going to let you go there.
Oh man, I think for me, because, okay, let's just rewind back from like when I started. I started brainstorming because I like ideas. I like being in the brain and the creativity of a business and putting it all together and detangling, like that made me happy. I wasn't aware of the impact it was having on people's lives. And I remember like when I did my market research and people would like cry or get emotional. And I was like,
you weren't expecting us.
I was not expecting that. Like the reaction took me off, like threw me off.
You handled it so well.
That is the adapter strength of mine. Because inside I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, should I be like, cry, stop? I don't know what's going on here. Because I'm just thinking from my point of view is like, oh, we're going to talk about ideas and business and thing. And I didn't realize that like, it was so much deeper than that. Like I was unlocking you and that purpose. And I was seeing things that you as the client, you as the person that I am brainstorming with could not see or didn't see. Like I was oblivious to what was happening. So as time started going and, I'm starting to see certain reactions. I'm starting to see people like this, they body light up or they get emotional, my clients. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, I think I do more than just brainstorming.
Now we come to the intuitive brainstormer, and then the alignment thing is huge. Like, I think we were talking about like the feedback you were getting in your testimonials in terms of like how much clarity people got, but then they would still not be able to articulate what happened during one of your sessions.
Yeah.
And like we've spent a lot of time just calling it magic, but realistically, like I think I want to make sure people understand that like when you know your business fairly well, or like when you've been like in the doing stage of whatever you're doing, it's easy to lose sight of your why. Like, why did you start it? Or like maybe you've evolved and changed, something's changed in your life, and you can start looking at your business like resenting it or being extremely frustrated. Like it could be a super successful business, but as a business owner, you can still be dissatisfied for whatever reason. And what Nick does is help you figure out like what's missing, what either the business has moved on beyond what you thought it was going to be and it's taken on a life of its own. Because like right now I do a lot of one-on-ones, but if at some point it became where like I had coaches underneath me or a software that did most of what I do one-on-one, I would probably be very dissatisfied, because the part that I enjoy is the relationship aspect and the customization for individuals. And that's when I would probably come to Nick and be like, what is going on? And just be very confused. And then what Nick does is figure that out for you and say, this is what's missing, or have you considered this? And when it comes back into alignment, that's where when business owners talk about a life of ease, like that's what that is business does not need to be hard. And I'm like taking all these notes. Nick, you had a post about that too, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I post all the time about like, being in alignment is easy. It's freeing. It's like breathing. I mean, I always say if I didn't have to be on camera, I would brainstorm from my couch. Like, I really would, because it comes that natural. It's that easy. It's getting into alignment is what takes the work. And I realized, going back to your original question, is that like the more that I started brainstorming and the more people was coming, and with us talking, I realized like I was able to reposition you back into alignment for the purpose that you're here to do. And I think when a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the ones that are six-figure earners, multiple six figures, seven figures, like you're so good at what you do, that the thought of doing something else scare you. And I'm like, I made a post recently, like fear happens at every level of entrepreneurship. There's this misconception that like, oh, it's just like when you first start off because you don't know which direction. It happens at every single stage, because you're always going to have something new that you are curious about, or you probably want to explore. And sometimes not knowing what that looks like can be scary. I think that's what kind of was for you, is like, I'm telling you podcast what it's like, but what does that look like? So, all right, let's make that connection. Let me help you make that connection. Let me help you put that vision together where it feels aligned. It feels right. It feels like this part of you that you didn't even know needed to be freed is like happiness, joy, curiosity, what that looks like in your business. So all these things of being able to realize like that is what intuitive brainstorming does for your business. It was powerful. And now I'm just like embracing it. Before, I don't know if you remember, where I was like, I'm not with the woo. I don't woo.
We had a lot of resistance. Both of us had a lot of resistance to the word woo. Like, wait, what?
Who wooing? Not me. And realizing like it's not, I don't have to wear a whole bunch of crystals. I can show up like this, fashionable, talk the way that I talk, but that doesn't discount the gift that I was blessed with. The purpose, that the reason I'm here for, the impact I'm here to make. Like I think we were talking and I was like, oh yeah, I build everybody's business in my head, and you're like, what the F? Like, who does
How
that?
Is it possible? Like, every time you say that, I imagine like this thought cloud behind your head with like all of like org charts and all of like flow diagrams.
I'm telling you, but for me it was so normal. So I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember a client of mine said, oh, I wish you would have gave me the questions you were going to ask me. And I was like, questions? She was like, yeah, you asked me all the questions. So I wish I knew beforehand what she's going to ask me so I could be prepared. And I was like, I don't write nothing down. And she was like, wait, all that came from your head? And I'm like, yeah. And I when I came back and kind of just like told you that part of it, of the conversation, and you was like, okay, because by that time, we're talking like all the time now, so my business. Yes. And then I'm like, when my clients talk to me like in real time, I'm building out their whole entire business. So one keyword can build out your entire business in my head. So that's how I'm able to like look at it from different angles. Okay, this is what a client said, and I didn't realize that was super unique and that was a gift. I'm just like, and I don't even think I realized that's what I was doing.
Not until you told me, probably.
Yeah, I don't think I realized that, because I'm like, oh, I don't need a chalkboard. Like, why I need a chalkboard for? Like, it's all in, and it was all in my head. And I'm a big believer that like, what is ordinary to us? What is our gifts that sometimes we don't even notice, because it's just how we interact with this world or with our everyday life.
Yes.
It's extraordinary. It comes so natural. It's extraordinary to someone else. And my gift is to see that gift, that talent, that thing that makes you tick and move and say like, oh, that's what you're here to do. That's your superpower. And let's connect that with the business so that you can make impact. And just knowing that made it easier for me to show up, made it easier for me to be visible and say like, every these boxes that society and other entrepreneurs try to put us in, like everybody ain't meant to be in a box.
That's right. Or not the boxes that other people put you in.
Not the box. Exactly. So I'm all about like, let's like, I always say to you, I'm here for the entrepreneur and their business, not the other way around.
Yeah, you're always about like how the entrepreneur feels or what their talent is. And I do want to circle back though, because I remember you telling me that about how you didn't have like a script that you were operating off of, and you ask very technical questions that are like very business specific. So I can tell, right? Like we met and I didn't know anything about your background, but I knew that you understood like the terms around marketing and strategy and all these things that like a newbie to business wouldn't even know to ask those questions. And like, I remember you saying that, and I was like, that's how smart you are, that you're able to visualize in your head. Like you didn't need to draw it out so that you didn't have like to me, drawing it out is so that I don't have to store it all in my head while I'm imagining it. And not only are you like drawing it in your head, you're also like turning the model around like a 3D model and like looking for the missing pieces. And you do it so smoothly, and your sessions are only 60 minutes. You don't do much prep. And you don't do a write-up afterwards. That like the fact that all that magic happens in 60 minutes is not only like like anytime we talk about like the concept that we're woo and intuitive, I also want to point out that it's only intuition because that's how fast your brain goes.
Yeah.
And you can't slow down long enough to articulate every little step. It's like when you do math and you're like supposed to show your work, you're doing like 100 steps, and you can't possibly show your work and get the results that you get in such a short amount of time.
Thank you for that. And it's so funny that you say that, because I would be in a session and someone would say, what did you just say? And I'm like, you got to go back to the recording. I'm in a flow. If anyone ever brainstorm with me, do not ask me to go back and think about something that I just said, because it, like you said, my mind is going like a million miles, like everything is just going. And I don't know if you remember, where when we first started, and I would get like all my clients have been amazing, and they have been like lessons for me and a reflection of like, oh my God, this is what's happened. And I remember in the beginning, I had like clients that made me question what I was doing, because I don't want to get too specific in it, but I don't know if you remember, like I was like, what was that? What is going on? Because I didn't understand the placement. And I think that's important in business too. Like even with you, like the placement of like, where do you belong? Like, you go want something, but it's like, you're not for everyone, right? That's how I used to tell you, like, these are your people, TJ. This is who you should be talking to, and that guidance. So even with myself and my business, when I would just having everyone come in and I would get a particular type of client that was more on the newer side, and because they couldn't move as quick as I move, it felt weird to me. It was weird. And I didn't understand that. So I would vent like, what the hell just happened? Did they
really
get it?
Yeah. I want to share this like insight with people, right? And there are going to be times that, especially as an entrepreneur, we talk about getting to be our own boss and picking our clients, that like we end up in this spot, especially in the beginning, when we're just taking any client that comes to our door. And we don't realize that sometimes we're doing something we love, but then it, like, for some reason, that one session or that one client is such a burden that like you're back into like that toxic work environment that you probably left your corporate job to avoid, because we haven't honed in on who exactly our target audience is, or what positioning that we need to be in, or like what criteria has to happen for that client before they work with you. So it's easy to get discouraged early on if you're not doing the extra work of understanding like why something's not enjoyable anymore. So like with Nick, I want to say 80% of your sessions, you were like super on a high afterwards. And then there would be a couple that you would be like, what happened there? And we would sit here and talk about like, okay, what was different this time? Did you do something different? Did they do something different? And it takes a lot of experimenting to figure out like what those things are, like what you can replicate when it is enjoyable, and what to avoid when it's not the experience that you want to have. And I think that's where I want to bring up the concept of the scarcity mindset versus abundance, is that we take all the clients that come to us because we're scared that we won't ever have another client. And that's why sometimes people find that business can be difficult, because they've put themselves in that position where they didn't set boundaries or parameters about what type of clients they would work for, or for what price that they were willing to offer a particular service or good, that they've shrunk themselves to a point where it becomes difficult. And it's not an easy thing to do, to come back the other way and say, I trust that if I am for a certain type of person and I'm talking specifically to that client, and I say no to everybody who doesn't fit in those parameters, that my business will be easy, and that I will continue to attract clients that I enjoy working with, and it will be like financially sustainable. And that is an ongoing struggle that most business owners experience, especially when they're still a solopreneur or they have a very small team.
I completely agree with everything that you say. I think also sometimes what we forget is, like, I'm just going to go back to like me, because in my mind, I was doing something I don't want to do so long. And the fact that like people resonated with it and they wanted this service from me, I would just like, come, everybody come on now. Like, know, it satisfied a place in me that brought me joy. And that's how huge on like finding the joy within your business and in your life, because you show up differently. And through me having everyone come in, which it had nothing to do with the client itself that came through the session, it was what we realized is that it was an energy exchange that didn't feel good to me. So not that the work wasn't hidden, not that that they wasn't getting what they came for, the energy exchange between both of us of what lit me up wasn't aligned. And that's when I think through like talking and maybe having like 3 of those type of clients where I was like, whoa, it's too slow for me. These and this is what I want to say to anyone that's listening that, have their business, want to start something new, or even if you're new to business, experiment. Don't be afraid to be curious and go and experiment, because I wouldn't have known what I know now if I didn't have these experiences of like having a certain client that I'm like questioning, like, why does it don't feel the way that the others felt, and realizing like, oh, because of my energy, I had to lower my energy to meet this person, not because they had low energy, but because they weren't comfortable yet with where they were in their business. So right away, once we got to the core of that, it was like, okay, I do well with the six figures. I do well with the ones that have their business because the pivot is quick.
Yeah.
I don't have to slow down my thought process
Yes.
to meet up with someone and have to think like, well, what this look like because you don't know your business. So, and that wasn't every client, it
Mhm.
had some that were new that was quick with it, but I realized like there's an energy that
Yeah.
I thrive at. And I want other entrepreneurs to be conscious of the energy that you are, operating in your business with and you're attracting, because that matters. We don't realize that that really matters. If you got to bring your energy down where you don't thrive well at that, why are you doing that? And that goes into having a choice of who you work with, having a choice of saying, I want to work with these type of people because, and it don't got to be just about them. Make it about you. I don't
Yes.
like that energy level. I don't thrive at a lower energy level. I'm not,
Absolutely.
and just that awareness makes a big difference in how you show up in your business and the type of business that you have, and the clients that you attract, and all these things. And I wouldn't have learned all these things unless I tried it.
Yes. And like I want to highlight that for people. Make it about you, especially when you're a solopreneur. Make it about you because you didn't choose to be in business just to replicate the environment that you left. Whatever that was, you don't want to carry that habit back into your business and suddenly be your own boss but just be a slave to the business that you've created. So, yes, there are ways like tried and true ways that you're used to operating, but like if you left it, there was a reason, and you want to actually take the time and choose to be selfish about like, and we're fighting that societal message that we're supposed to like put others first and be supportive and be the giver. But you can't show up as your full self. You can't provide like your absolute genius unless you've modeled your business to support you in the way that you thrive, or the level of service that you want to provide. And Nick talks about like bringing the energy down, but for some people they like sitting down at that level and they don't want to be at the super fast pace. So Nick is fast paced, and her offers are primarily one and done. So there's no long-term support. There's no like catching it on the back end to make sure that the result is there. She has the one opportunity to get somebody that transformation. Versus some of us might want to do something that's a little bit more long term. We space it out a little bit more, and especially for the more technical services where we're trying to teach somebody something, where you want to have that spread out so that people have an opportunity to absorb and integrate, and then you come back and you check in to make sure that like people are on course, or that you're delivering something that you need them to review and provide feedback and approve. Like those are like, that's the range that you just need to recognize for yourself. What are you willing to put your energy into? At what pace do you want to do that? And you get to decide whether or not your offer is something that is one and done, which I think is something fairly rare I see in the online space, of just choosing to do something without any back end support. Or if you want it to be like minimum, you can't work with me as a coach unless it's 3 months. Like I see a lot of life coaches do that because we know that the transformation that we hope to see in our clients isn't possible in 1 week. It just isn't the type of growth that those types of coaches look to achieve. So allow yourself to be selfish in the sense of understanding what works for you, what supports the lifestyle that you want to live. Nick and I have been talking about her becoming a digital nomad, and the fact that her services are one and done actually means that like she doesn't have to worry about what time zone she operates in. In fact, it opens it up. Once she's in somebody else's time zone, she has more availability to serve the international clients that she already has. And like I just think that looking at it at that big picture and being intentional about who you are, like starting from you from within, will make a big difference in how successful you feel in your business. Not just how much money comes in the door, but how you feel about it.
Yes. And, I think a lot of time is because there's this thing that if I have to, this obligation, like I have to go through the long road with you and hold you and thing. And I like to tell people, like, especially entrepreneurs, like, put yourself in a position where you thrive. Where you thrive. Like, I'm a catalyst. I'm a fire starter. I'm the one that lit the flame in you. And I know that is where I do really well at. Me having you 6 months, we're going to look at each other like this.
You're like, why are we doing this?
Why are we still here? Because things move so quick with me. Like, for me, it would drag it on. So I had to be comfortable with saying, like, what space do I work with an entrepreneur where they get the best of me? And I could give them all of me because I'm happy, I'm energized, they're fueling me. And that is the beginning stages of that pivot, that alignment, that, like, this is what I'm here to do, and then you could go or connect you with people that take along that journey with you in the capacity of like coaching and consulting, unless, it's a mentorship, which that feels good to me now. Like, I want to be an alignment mentor, like keep you on track with that vision that you have and stuff. And even that is not no long-term thing, but just being comfortable of like where you thrive, understanding where you thrive. Everyone isn't a finisher. Some people are starters with you. And that's okay. That is okay. Create your business where that energizes you.
Absolutely. And I want to highlight that, like, not everybody like does the whole life cycle, because we had Quintus watching earlier, and like from a project management background, it's very true that for project managers, there are some of us that love starting a project and then like doing the business case and handing that off, or we're very good at closing a project, getting it over the finish line. And there's some that like to do the steady state across the whole board. And although like it would be convenient for our bosses for us to be able to do everything, reality is we all know that we prefer a certain stage. And if we could just hand it off to somebody else at like as a relay race instead, we would. So I love that you've been able to identify where you fit into that picture in your business model, and where in like somebody else's business model you like where you step in specifically and are able to articulate that. Because like, we're so used to being told that we have to do everything, and it's not true
at all. At all. And then you got to think why, burnout, or not being happy in your business, or feeling drained when you're with certain clients, because you probably use all your energy doing things that just doesn't energize you. It just doesn't. Like, we joke like, I'm the Papa Queen. I may have something or do something and it's powerful, and that may be the last time I do it, or I can't tell you when I'm going to do it again, because that's how I show up in my authenticity. I'm a creative. So like, if I respond to something that is like the brainstorming circle, right? And then that was wildly successful, everyone loved it. Oh, when are you going to have another one? I'm like, soon. And I'm like, no.
Then you trust your gut. Trust your gut. And it turns into like that quintessential like work feeling, right? Like, you don't have to be like, you're not obligated to do it. And like, that's the beauty of being you're a business owner, right? Is that you get to decide that.
Exactly. Make the offers that light you up and that you are energized with. Attract the clients that energizes you. And I think that makes a difference of how you show up in your business, and you're aligned. And something that I'm always saying is like, alignment in your business and your life is just like if you have like a disc in your back that's out of place. It hurts, but you can still work, but it hurts. So until you see a chiropractor and get it back into alignment, and where you get that relief, you're always going to feel like unsatisfied, or feel in some type of pain, or feel drained, or like you don't want to get out of bed. And it's the same thing with your business and your life. Like, when you're out of alignment, you can still do the work. You're doing it damn good. But there's a pain, an inner like, this just doesn't feel good anymore. This doesn't lighten me up. I'm not making the impact I'm here to make. And that is where I see a lot of entrepreneurs go. And then they're looking at someone else doing a damn thing and not realizing they're aligned. That's what they're here to do.
Yes.
That's what they're here to do. That's why you see that energy coming and that glow within themselves. And then you're trying to emulate that, but that's not what you were here to do.
Yes.
That's not the impact you're here to make. And just making that connection with my clients and, guiding them along that way of like, whoa, let's go. It's powerful.
It is. It really is, because there's so many ways to structure what you do or how you offer things. And I think some of it is that we crave that certainty. So we'll look at somebody else's blueprint and go, well, clearly in social media world, you can't actually tell whether or not somebody's doing financially well because of a certain thing. It's true in the case of large, like, I support Nestle USA in some of their work, and when they do market research. Usually you can only tell what like competitors do based off of their commercials. You don't have the data behind the facts of like, okay, how many did they actually sell, or did this campaign style work for them? Like those are things that you can't tell from the outside, and even large corporations haven't figured out that secret to like understanding what their competitors are doing. So it's like, although we crave that certainty, what's even better is when you're certain of your own alignment, of what's meant for you. And that's the magic that Nick provides, is getting you to what's meant for you, not what's meant for somebody else.
Somebody else. That is powerful, and I think that's what's so cool, magical about working with entrepreneurs, like 6 figures, 7 figures, that areas, because now we identify that making money ain't a problem, because you made the money. You made the money. Now let's go for the impact. Let's go for the alignment. Let's go for the joy. Let's go for the ease. Let's go for the thing that lights your soul on fire. And that pivot is beautiful to see. It's sweet. It's like, I don't know, like it's just like walking at the beach or in nature, and not giving a F who see you.
It's true. And like, I want to circle back to the concept of like, of designing your offers to fit the way you want to live. And for me with the podcasting, I remember telling you like, I didn't connect it to the podcasting at the time, but telling you that I wanted to just be able to show up and do, and like have all the logistics taken care of by my team, and just be able to speak to the topics that I care about, and like share the wisdom that I already have. And that would be my ideal model. And I can't say that I'm 100% there yet, but I can see it now that in the podcast, if all I have to do is get on with my guest and hit record, and we just have such a natural conversation and these deep kinds of conversations, and have that ability to share that with the world, that is what I want, is to be able to do things like that, where I'm a speaker or I'm an author or I'm running this podcast or I'm a guest on somebody else's. Those are like, that's my like sweet spot of like, I would love it if that's all I had to do, like the only obligation I had. And I'm definitely inching towards that. But you've led by example there for me. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And you know, you definitely are a gem, and have helped me tremendously in all my thoughts, because you get access to all this craziness up in here. And I think what I truly believe is like, when you are doing aligned work, the universe brings people to help you along. So even with you meeting with your podcast producers, like that's divine intervention, you know. And the more that you align, and it's like, okay, this feels good, people are going to come into your life to help the work, because you're doing the work you're here to do. You know, you're not keeping your gifts to yourself. You're not keeping you're here to make impact, and the universe provides the help for you to do that.
I feel that. I really do. The amount of support of, as I've shared my journey of like what I was trying to do, that I've gotten, not just from you and Hannah, but from just my audience saying, hey, this is important work. Don't stop. Don't like let fear overcome the stories that you want to be able to tell. Like that has been huge in getting me to like be able to invest in it financially, invest my time into it, and be willing to like be so visible marketing it, right? Because I could still, technically I could make a podcast and still hide it from the world by never telling anybody about it. But because everybody I've told about like my journey to do this has been so enthusiastic about it, it has really allowed me to share it with the rest of the world and be able to reach more people this way. So I do, we could talk forever. Nick and I do talk forever. Yes. We're always on all sorts of apps talking to each other. But I do want to wrap it up. So Nick, would you share with the audience how they can find you?
Yes. So you can follow me on Instagram at the Brainstorming Bestie. I'm on TikTok as the Brainstorming Bestie. My website is the Brainstorming Bestie. That's branding for you. If you are interested in, you know, a brainstorming session with me, just, you know, slide into my DM. If you want to chat about what I do, want to learn more about me. I am also, which I'm excited about, putting together a paid workshop that is called Fearless to Authentic Boss Self. It's not set up yet. I'm waiting for something to respond to. So there is a waiting list. If anyone knows human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So response is how I'm supposed to wait. And I'm trying to trust the process. Just like I tell everyone else, like trust your journey. And if you are interested in that, I want to know more, DM me and get on a wait list, and I'll let you know when that comes out. And thank you so much, TJ, for this conversation. Super happy and proud of you for coming to fore and launching your podcast, which is so needed in the space. And just your realness and your transparency and just always showing up and being true to you. So thank you. And I'm super happy for you.
Yeah, thank you for all of your support. So for anybody listening that hasn't seen where to find the podcast, it's called the Asian Detox Podcast. It is available on most podcast apps today. I did check the analytics, and looks like there's still some of the hosts, so I listen to podcasts on Stitcher, and it is not yet available on Stitcher. They take a little bit of time to approve new podcast shows. So if it's not on your app yet, you can still listen to it on your browser. If you go to the asiandetoxpodcast.com, there's a link to listen through the Captivate website. So if your app doesn't show it in your search results yet, it will be there, but it is on Spotify, iTunes, and a lot of the other large podcast platforms today.
Yes, everyone go listen to the podcast. It's amazing. Just the conversations that TJ is having. And a lot of times we think that we can't relate to another culture experience, and it's not true. We experience it just maybe in a little different way. So just even having these aha moments that she had and listen to it has been really entertaining and impactful. So go listen and rate.
Right.
And leave a review.
Rate, review, subscribe, do all the things that make the algorithm surface it up more, so more people can find it. It helps so much to get the message out. And I want to mention too, I keep forgetting to, I also opened a separate Instagram account, Asian_Detox. So if there is something that resonates for you in one of the episodes, please feel free to comment on the episode thumbnail and share those stories with us so that we can build a true community around these conversations. Thanks, guys.
Bye.